Good evening. You're watching our continuous coverage of the Union Budget 2022. I'm Rishika Barua. Well, a push for infrastructure and a 30% tax on transfer or sale of digital assets were among the key headlines of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's Budget 2022. The income tax rates, crucially, have been kept unchanged. On a lighter note, when the Finance Minister was asked in a press conference why she hasn't given relief to the common man, on a lighter note, she said, well, at least I haven't increased the tax burden on the common man. Now, the opposition claims that this is a budget that has nothing really to offer the deprived, the salaried class or backward, weaker sections. Prime Minister Modi has countered that by saying that this is a budget that will benefit all, especially the poor and the backward sections. He's called it a people-friendly and a progressive budget. Let's break down some of these tall claims that have been made as well as the criticism that is coming in at the moment. Joining us, we have Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist, Bank of Baroda. We also have Dr. Brinda Jagirdar, Economist, with us. Thank you both very much for joining us. We'll be joined by our other guests in just a bit. Madan Sabnavis, if I can begin by asking you, the digital rupee using blockchain is going to be issued by the RBI. Lots of questions and a lot of interest around that big announcement. How are you looking at it?
In fact, it will be quite innovative because we have seen that central banks across the world are all looking in terms of bringing out their own digital currency. But in a society like ours, where we are so used to cash, and we have seen that even post demonetization, we are still being disgraced for cash for various reasons. I think we can think of a digital central bank currency, a digital rupee for that matter. It will definitely bring a lot of convenience and a lot of transparency. But the fact that we still like to deal in cash is important, because even today, if you want to buy property, you go for a marriage and you want to give a gift to someone, there's lots of gold and lots of money which is transacted between people. The moment you have a digital currency, you're transacting in a digital currency, all these transactions can be tracked. So I think from the point of view of the government and the taxman, I think it's a very good idea. But in Indian society, making it compulsory would be a very long way off. And besides, I think even Brinda will probably agree with me that in case we have only electronic rupees, what's going to happen to the bank? So we have all these UPI and different payment systems and e-wallets. All that will disappear because the RBI will be holding the reins and we can be transacting in the digital rupee. So on the whole, I think it's something which is happening in the world.
Yes.
But I think we put a lot of thought before we actually implement it and make sure that we're able to cover it. Just think of the situation. We have only digital rupees. I don't require ATMs. I don't require security forces. I don't require branches. So it has lots of other ramifications for a country like us. But I'm quite sure the RBI will think through it before bringing it out and making it mandatory at some point of time.
Sure. Dr. Jagirdar, would you agree with that assessment? I mean, it's definitely very interesting. It's very progressive. It's in sort of response and consonance with what's happening elsewhere in the world. But the questions of implications and implementation on the ground in India are very, very different from what's happening globally.
Well, more than 25 central banks have introduced their own digital currencies. So this is nothing new. And in India also, we have a lot of private players. Now, what is important is that, let's not forget that India is the fastest growing digital economy in the world. And by 2024, India will be the third largest digital economy after the US and China. So this is an area where we definitely need to step in and make sure that we are on the right track. It will help to bring all the economic activity into the formal sector. But I don't think we can make it compulsory. I agree with what Madan is saying, that it will make transactions much simpler, and it'll probably cut down the cost of transactions and the cost which the banks also face. But I don't think we can make it compulsory. That's one. And we're still a long way off when people understand it and accept it. But we need to make sure that there's a regulator, that there's something to control frauds in this area. And more than anything else, the judicial system also needs to step up and make sure that the fraudsters are caught and punished. So this is a very important area where we definitely need to step in. But we have to see how we have put the safeguards in place.
Well, absolutely. Like I said, the logistical question and the challenge here, is going to be something which is extremely key to the implementation of this idea, however futuristic it might be. We also have Rajneesh Kumar, Chairman of CII National Committee on Banking, joining us. He's also the former Chairman of SBI. Thanks very much. We were just, discussing this big announcement about, digital currency that's been made. A lot of interest around how this plays out. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so it is a digital currency which will be issued by RBI. So far the details are not available. But as far as the currency is concerned, the technology, which is the blockchain technology, the underlying technology, that is quite developed. And so far the cryptocurrency, if we can call them cryptocurrency, then it is all private. And first time effort is being made, say by Chinese Central Bank and our own Reserve Bank of India. So I think we have to wait for more details and how it will be working, because my understanding of blockchain and crypto is that it is a network of computers worldwide where the blockchains operate and talk to each other and validations happen. So if it is the same technology and the currency issuance by Reserve Bank of India, and as I was hearing some of your panelists about that India is becoming a digital economy and would be the third largest digital economy in 2-3 years time. So this is a beginning, and but as I said that the actual implementation and how does it get accepted, we will have to wait and watch.
Yes.
It is, I think, a bit premature then to make any speculation about it.
While of course we're talking about the modalities of, digital currency, we're talking about the digital rupee and how it's going to use the whole blockchain technology. Madan Sabnavis, we're also, taking that 30% crypto tax as one of the key takeaways, a very big headline. How do you look at these two announcements together today?
Actually, I think taxing cryptocurrency is a very good move. In fact, ideally, I would say that there should be a ban on cryptocurrency because it's pure gambling. There's no underlying. But now that we already have around 7.5 lakh crores of rupees which resides in various cryptocurrencies, it's difficult to say that all these things are just being wiped out. So I think making it analogous to gambling, where you are charging a rate of 30%, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think logically we should also allow betting in IPL also. Because why should we stop it? Because this is just a fictitious coin. I can bring out a Sabnavis coin, Brinda brings out a Brinda coin, and if lots of people believe in it, we start trading, we make money. And then at the end of the day, I think we need to pay the government the tax. So, but definitely, I think one thing which probably the government did not talk on, which it should, is that they should make it criminal to use cryptocurrency as a mode of payment. So here as a mode of investment, it's okay, you're taxing it. But unfortunately, I've heard somebody saying in Delhi restaurants accept cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. Now, you can't have a parallel to a rupee running in any country, especially in India. So that was, I think they had a view on that. That would have been also important, useful. Right.
Do you think there's still a lot of detail that still perhaps needs to be worked out, a lot of clarity needed? Brinda Jagirdar, you were talking earlier when, in your initial comments about digital currency coming into India, on how there's going to have to be a whole mechanism to address fraud, a judicial mechanism. There's going to have to be deterrence mechanisms put in place. How do you look at this 30% tax on cryptocurrency? Do you welcome it like Madan Sabnavis?
Yes, I mean, I agree with what he says. This tax, and it's not just within the country. See, cryptocurrency can be cross-border. So how do you control that? And so that again is a huge, big issue. So I would look at it as just a beginning, but a lot of work needs to be done, as Mr. Rajneesh Kumar rightly said. That we still need to. We don't really know all the nitty-gritty about how this whole is going to pan out. So a lot of details we still need to study and we still need to look at and strengthen the legal framework around it.
Right. But Rajneesh Kumar, isn't that also part of the problem? The fact that there is no law Yet there's been so much discussion and debate over whether or not we are going to see a crypto bill, a detailed understanding of what the government's stand on cryptocurrency is. So we don't have that law in place yet. We don't have a very comprehensive understanding of the government's thinking. But what we do know is that there's going to be this 30% levy. Do you think that, perhaps it's time that we have more clarity than just that 30% tax?
No, let me first make a small clarification that we must distinguish what is a currency and what is an asset and what is a commodity. So,
right.
Using the word cryptocurrency is not the right thing.
Okay.
Cryptocurrency would be, if at all, what Reserve Bank proposed to do, which will be a cryptocurrency in real sense.
Right. Okay.
What the bill talks today about is the virtual digital assets.
Okay.
So the confusion around the taxation has been cleared, that the crypto will be treated, or NFT also, they will be treated as virtual digital asset. It is an asset. And whenever you do a transaction, and if there is an income arising out of it, then it will be taxed at 30%, and TDS of 1%. It takes care at least of the issue around the KYC and anti-money laundering, because there is a trail when there is a TDS.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you just. I'm going to interrupt you just there. I'm going to interrupt you just there because I'm going to interrupt you just there. Apologies for that, but we have Dr. Subhash Sarkar, Minister of State for Education, Government of India, joining us. Thanks very much, Dr. Sarkar, for being with us on NDTV. There was a lot of important announcements being made in terms of the government's roadmap ahead for the education sector. Many would say absolutely needed, with the Finance Minister acknowledging the fact that there has almost been a break in the education of our children for 2 years. How are you looking at some of those big announcements being made in terms of TV channels and digital universities?
First of all, I would like to impress to the all audience that after independent India, this year is the first time there is allocation in education ministry is more than 1 lakh crore. That is 1,04,277.72,000 crores. That is a more than 1 lakh crore. This is very important part. Even after this pandemic, till our government has done this marvelous job. Yes, there are learning loss in the last 2 years because of pandemic. So our government is very much serious. They have already developed that they have decided that to develop 200 TV channel, each class, from class 1 to class 12, in different regional languages. Total 200 TV channels will be launched very soon. And in addition to this, 750 virtual lab in science and mathematics. This is also very important. And for the skilling e-labs, 75 skilling e-labs will be, that is in the, and at the same time, digital university. And digital university will be such that will glorify all other institutes, definitely. And with the different Indian languages and ICT format.
Yes.
And that will be in the first time in India. There is a hub and spoke model.
Right.
This is the first time in India. And in addition to this, all the e-content will be improved much more. Yes.
Dr. Sarkar, very, very important, to understand the fact that there is an acknowledgement from the government about learning loss in the last 2 years. We're putting out that graphic that you just spoke about, which is, an 18% hike in the budget for the education sector. And I think this is very, very welcome. But, the big question here is, can digital learning at a time when there is such a huge digital divide actually answer to some of the key questions at the moment, which is the fact that our children need to be vaccinated and they need to be sent back to school. Can digital learning in a certain sense really substitute classroom teaching in a country like ours where the digital divide is so real?
Yes. Look, we are considering about the digital device, but at the same time, in every villages, there are the facilities of TV, Doordarshan, and we will teach through Doordarshan. And that's why 200 TV channels are being installed very shortly. And we are also thinking about the internet facilities even in the remote villages. There are the provisions in the budget. It has been mentioned.
Right.
In the remote villages, the internet facilities will be provided.
Respectfully, sir, you know, all of these things, like I said, very welcome that the government is acknowledging the learning loss and is looking at technology as a means to address it. But my question as somebody who's at the helm of affairs of education in the country, do you think that the focus perhaps needs to be on both things, which is putting our children back into the classroom? Because many educational experts argue that digital learning just cannot substitute learning in a classroom, you know, physically with your peers.
Yes. Our government is very serious on that. And you think that we are the #1 country. Those have provided such a huge amount of vaccination, and even in the school going children, from 15 to 18, there is a very fast vaccination have been done, and it is the world record. That means we also consider for the classroom teaching also. We are not considering only there is a virtual teaching, only digital teaching. Yes, we are very much interested on the classroom teaching as well as digital teaching simultaneously.
Right. To parents who are listening intently right now, there have been many questions on, you know, as the economy opens up, we're quick to open our markets and malls, but schools seem to come last on the list. That's of course because of concerns of safety and the health and safety of children, which is paramount. But what more can parents expect the government to do in terms of looking at reopening schools, putting children back in classrooms on a priority basis, sir?
Yes, different states are considering for this, and they are going for the gradual opening of the schools.
Right. Naturally,
I hope so. The states will decide, because education is the concurrent subject.
Yes.
Naturally, state has to decide, and we have already sent the advisories in different states.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sarkar, for speaking with NDTV. It's a huge push as far as education is concerned in the Union Budget 2022. Like Dr. Sarkar was elaborating as well, over 1 lakh crore being allocated, an 18% jump in the education budget in the last 1 year. And this, of course, many would say is very timely and much needed at a time when the learning loss in India, especially given the digital divide, has been huge. So that was Dr. Sarkar talking about how the government is in fact intent on putting children back in the classrooms, vaccinating children, as well as focusing, of course, on enhancing digital infrastructure. All right. Well, we've had a panel of experts with us on the broadcast. I'm sorry to have interrupted our conversation earlier, and we were talking about one of the other big highlights of the budget, which is the announcement that the RBI is going to be putting in place the digital rupee. This is, of course, going to be using blockchain technology. And we also have Arvind Mayaram with us. He's a former finance secretary. Thanks very much, sir, for joining us on NDTV. One of the other aspects that we've been talking about is, of course, digital rupee being the future, but many logistical challenges associated with it. We're also asking key questions on whether a 30% crypto tax is something which was the need of the hour, and when one can really expect there to be more clarity on the government stand on cryptocurrency. How are you looking at these developments?
So two things. One, cryptocurrency is here to stay. Bitcoins, etc., here to stay. Yes. All over the world, they have now. So we can't wish them away. And so therefore, as a first step, that it has been recognized as a commodity, I think is a welcome move, because at least there is some, it is not now in the gray area anymore. And it has now come mainstream in terms of product trading. So it has become more like a product, like gold being traded. You can trade cryptocurrency in that sense. One thing about taxation is, unfortunately, that the finance minister did not say cryptocurrencies will be taxed at 30. She said digital assets. Now, digital assets include digital content of all kinds, for instance, music or cinema. Like you have all this is digital content. So if you make any profits from this digital content, all the other digital assets that are in the market at 30%, and you are saying you cannot even set it off against your losses otherwise, it is going to be a huge setback to this particular emerging industry, which also is the one which is going to provide a lot of jobs going forward. We have already seen how OTP has really kept the cinema alive when all the cinema theaters were closed, etc. Now a huge amount of content is being developed there. So I think government should have sat back and thought a little more carefully as to how they do taxation. And instead of just giving a kind of a big sweep on all digital assets, because digital assets also have a very useful developmental value, and this is going to be detrimental to the growth in that particular sector. As far as the digital rupee is concerned, we'll still have to see what exactly does it mean.
Right.
I mean, we don't know what exactly a digital rupee means. Today, for instance, all the transactions that we do on online transactions we do, or credit card transactions we do, are actually digital currency.
Right.
We never see the actual hard currency in our hand.
Well, very important points there. Yes, we definitely need more clarity.
What exactly does it mean by saying there's going to be issuance of a digital rupee?
Sure.
I mean, I still have to understand how exactly it is going to be different from what we are doing today.
Yes.
Already.
Very important points there, of course, in terms of the definition of the digital rupee, as well as this 30% tax on digital assets. For a short form, we're calling it a crypto tax, but I think you make a very important point there that it's not just about crypto, it's about, taxing digital assets in general. We're going to continue this conversation on the other side of what's going to be a very short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching our continuous coverage of Budget 2022. We have a panel of experts to try and analyze this budget for us, the claims and, of course, the criticisms. Let me come to you at the moment, Dr. Jagidar, once again, because one of the criticisms that's come in, if you look at the bigger picture in terms of the budget, has been really a question over spending in the healthcare sector up by just 1%. And at a time when jobs really is a huge challenge ahead for the government, we're actually seeing that the rural employment budget has been slashed by 25%. How are you looking at this?
No, the Narendra budget was increased during the lockout when people had gone back to the villages and there were no other jobs.
Yes.
But now industry is opening up. People are coming back to their jobs. There are not enough takers. There are not enough. They don't need such a big budget anymore. So that is why the budget has been cut down. What I would say is that where jobs are concerned, there are so many areas now. The infrastructure, PLI, digitization, gaming, artificial intelligence, space technology, agriculture startups. I mean, drone technology. There are so many areas which are opening up for jobs, and these are all different kinds of skills. We need skilled jobs. We don't need just Narendra type of jobs. And I think that's what is going to provide the employment. Now, infrastructure is very, very important because of its multiplier effects on industry and on jobs, because it leads to increased demand for, say, steel, cement and all other industries.
Right.
But at the same time, the social infrastructure, which not enough attention had been given to in the past, I think that has received a lot of attention. Social infrastructure in terms of education and healthcare. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is a continuity. In each budget, they don't have to say we have set up so many hospitals.
Yes.
They have given incentives for setting up hospitals. So I think that continues. And for me, the way I look at it, it is this the combination of the physical infrastructure and the social infrastructure that is really going to help boost growth going forward.
Right. Arvind, Mayram, do you want to come in there as well? Because, this, like I said, is there are many questions. Do you agree with Dr. Jagirdar that the 25% reduction, say, in rural employment was something that's been done because there are now enough jobs in the sector? Would you reckon that to be true, given the fact that CMI data actually shows that unemployment is at the moment at a 4-month high? Do you think the government's done enough to address the jobs issue?
Well, not in the budget, but obviously, see, look, we need to look at it in a more nuanced manner. See, drone technology, etc., is all very well to say, but let me ask this question on the panel: exactly how many jobs in the drone technology area do we expect in this particular year?
Sure.
I mean, 10,000, 5,000, 4,000. In a country where unemployment rate is extremely high at the moment, which we all, or any of the new areas that have been spoken of, how many jobs will be created? So I mean, we shouldn't get we shouldn't get dazzled by the glitter of these terms, because when you drill down, they really don't translate into that. They are important. I'm not saying they're not important. For the economy, they're important. But all this will start paying dividend down the line, say in 10 years, 20 years, 10 years, 20 years time. It's not something which is happening this year or next year or even year after next. Now, on the infrastructure side, we need to see something which is very interesting. The interesting part is that last year also, if you see the budget of last year, the finance minister said the same thing, that we are going to invest X amount of money. There's going to be this national pipeline, infrastructure pipeline, and then there was a monetization pipeline, if you remember or recall, and which had very huge numbers given to it.
Right.
And the Prime Minister had also announced from the Red Fort for last 3 years how every year 1 lakh crore or more is going to be spent and so on.
Sure.
Last year, the government had put some close to 5.5 lakh crores for infrastructure with the same intention. It is going to create a lot of jobs.
Yes.
And everything is going to happen. If you look at the CGA, which is Comptroller General of Accounts report of November of last year, by November last year, government had barely spent 49.9% of the targeted amount which was put in the budget last year for infrastructure. So I don't know in the last 4 months how much they have been able to catch up on that. We will get to know that possibly later in the year once the final accounts come out. But I doubt that they would have met their target of 5 lakh crore. Now this time they have said we have raised it to 7.5 lakh crores. Of course, these numbers also include the 1 lakh crore or plus, which they are going to give as interest-free loan to the states to spend. Now the capacity of the states to spend also we will need to see going forward how good or bad it could be. So I think there are too many ifs and buts on that count for us to be able to get that comfort that the kind of situation that we have seen in January this year, the reports, that last 2 reports which have come. But one big thing which I think worries me very much is that the government in the budget or in the economic survey for that matter has not recognized 4 very important factors. For instance, in the budget also, there's a very cursory conversation on inflation.
Right.
One question is, if you look at the GST numbers in January, which the finance minister said was going to be 1,40,000 crores, which unprecedented and so on, which she said. But look at the CPI and WPI numbers in the last 3 to 4 or 5 months. Obviously, the taxes are going to be higher if your prices are going to be higher. But what kind of impact it has on other parts of the economy that nobody seems to be thinking of.
Right.
So we have not spoken of inflation.
Sure.
You see, there is a very passing reference to inflation, which is a big worry. There is no conversation on unemployment. Not at all. I mean, what is the reason? Why have we reached the stage of unemployment, this huge unemployment?
Yes.
Inequality. Now, we have seen that we are talking about, per capita income in this last year is less than what it is going to be, what it was in
two very important points that you raised, and I just want to bring Madan Sabnawis back into the conversation here. The two big questions really on the increase in cost of living, inflation, something that hasn't really been addressed, again brings back the whole question on how the government in this budget has once again decided to leave direct taxes unchanged. There was an expectation perhaps that the government could look to consider giving some relief, but nothing of the sort has happened. How are you looking at that?
The way I look at it is that, the budget to my mind is an income and expenditure statement of the government. So therefore, my expectation from the budget is more limited. So I don't think it's a panacea for inequality, poverty, inflation, so on and so forth. So I think the starting point for the budget, I think, is that we decide that there is an FRBM path. I'm moving towards lowering my fiscal deficit. And if I lower my fiscal deficit, and based on the kind of GDP forecast which I have, I know what is going to be the total size of the budget. Okay. Now, even I would have liked direct taxes to be lower. Even I would have liked to pay lower tax, and I've been paying high tax for the last so many years.
Right.
But the fact is that the government has probably taken a call that first, when I have a certain amount of budget which I have, let me see as to what kind of revenue can I garner. And even here, I think they've been fairly reasonable in terms of the buoyancy of the taxes compared to the GDP, which is growth. I think what we saw last year has not been replicated in terms of growth rates.
Sure.
And then you look at what are the expenditures which are there, what are necessary. So they have looked at capital expenditure. I think you can always argue saying that I don't want capital expenditure, I want more health, I want more education. I mean, you can go round and round. Now, there's a fixed amount of money which can be spent, which is around 39 lakh crores. Some of them are fixed in terms of, say, something like interest payments, salaries, pensions, and probably even the subsidies. They've cut down on the subsidies because the free food is going off, fertilizer subsidy has come down.
Sure. And
then you say, okay, well, how do I make my expenditure effective? So that's how they are focused on capital expenditure. So while we could have had lots of things to be done, but we should recognize that there are certain constraints which are there in terms of availability of revenue. And I think when you spend on capital expenditure, there are so many sectors on which they're giving a thrust. They're giving it on housing, hospitality, IT sector. Now, all this is actually going to create jobs. Now, as what Brinda said, it's fine. We don't get the kind of unskilled jobs in Narendra. I'm lowering it. Actually, I wouldn't even say we're lowering the target because, in fact, last year you targeted 17,000 crores. And because you had a second lockdown, you had increased it by another 23,000 crores. So we're actually not lowered it. So depending on the conditions, I'm sure if we have another lockdown, the government will be proactive, will again do more on Narendra, they'll do more on free food. So everything will come back into scene. So I think it's a very reasonable kind of a budget.
Okay.
Everybody can't be made happy. It can't be that kind of a situation when all of us go around smiling around saying that I'm paying lower taxes.
Speaking of the fact that you can't make everybody happy, the criticism that's coming at least from the opposition is that there's nothing for the middle classes, nothing for the salaried class in this budget. Rajneesh Kumar, how would you respond to that?
No, but for last couple of years, the situation has been like this. And on the personal income taxation front, last year there was an attempt to move to much more simpler tax regime where intention was to do away with the deductions. But I think the matter rests there. And on the direct tax front, even whether it is corporate taxation or personal income tax, there's not much, and GST in any case is now out of the purview of the budget. So the entire focus, I think, is now on the expenditure side management and how it is used to spur the growth in the economy. But otherwise, from middle class, every year you expect that there will be some tax relief, but that has not come. So
also what's being looked at as an interesting development is that the updated returns can now be filed within 2 years. Many would say that this was really in the offing. Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, so that is more, I think, for the corporate side, I presume, where there could be errors. On personal income taxation front, it may not be as relevant for the personal income tax purpose.
Yes.
So basically, if you look at the inflation, so your income net of tax, it is going down. Because earlier what used to happen that at least some relief was always there for income tax, which was compensating for the inflation. But no such step is there.
Right. Pritha Jagidar, I want to bring you back.
One thing again, if you permit me about the...
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so one thing which comment, like for again, I wanted to clarify that we use the word for crypto. In the same breath, we use the word currency, commodity and asset. I've again wanted to clarify that with this budget, it has been put in the category of asset.
Right.
So it's not currency and it is not commodity.
Well, important clarification
And
in
the
terms
taxation will be
Yes.
like you buy you buy a car, it is an asset, and you sell a car. If you sell at a profit, you get taxed. So if you buy Bitcoin for say 30 lakh rupees one Bitcoin, tomorrow its price become 35 lakh and you sell that Bitcoin, that 5 lakh you pay 30% tax. And because there is a TDS, so identity issue to a large extent gets taken care of.
But you know, Brinda Jagidar, because you spoke of some of the big announcements that were made, respond to the criticism that Arvind Mayram has made in terms of the fact that key questions around inflation and rise in cost of living is something that the government hasn't addressed at all in the budget.
You know, it's important to increase the pie. When you have growth, when you have supplies in the economy, that is one way of keeping inflation down. If you keep on putting money in the hands of people without increasing supply, it's only going to push up inflation. And right now, inflation in India is not such a big concern. Yes, we need to watch out, we need to take care. But it is still within the RBI's comfort zone of 6%.
Right.
It's unlike the US where it is at a 7, it's reached 6-7%. And for them, it is something very, very alarming.
Okay.
It's not that kind of a situation in India.